Good afternoon. It's not morning anymore, everyone. My name is Isaac. This is Josh, and we have a special guest today on our business chat podcast, Georgia Chasen. We're gonna give her a chance to introduce herself. So, Georgia, let's let everyone who you are.
Great. Thanks so much, Isaac and Josh. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm Georgia Chasen, and I'm currently a realtor with Compass, also a contestant and cast member of the American Barbecue Showdown Season 1 on Netflix. And prior to that, a corporate VP. So I'm hitting the trifecta in terms of different categories of career I think that we could talk about today.
Yeah, that'll be great, and we're so excited to have you here because you had such a different background in terms of your career. But real quick for the audience, how we met, we had a production recently with Georgia, where she did fantastically acting as a mom because she is a new mom, and that's where we met, and we struck up a conversation about what she did previously and what she's doing now. So we thought it would be a great opportunity to bring her in to especially share her experience as she's transitioning from different professions or careers. And that can probably be a common thing that's happening, especially with the pandemic and, when a lot of craziness going on. So we're going to get right into it. I'm going to ask you questions about your background, but let's start off. Let's take it all the way back to your education, your college years. What were you interested when you were young, or maybe when you were a kid too? And what did you study in college?
Great question. So I was a theater major in college, which is not, I think, what most people expect to hear when we talk about certainly the corporate world. But I went to school on a partial theater scholarship, and I was really passionate about acting, and so for me, that is what I thought I was going to do. That led to a pivot as I completed my degree, although it was incredibly useful. And I used a lot and continue to use a lot of those skills in sales and in presentations and in marketing. But I realized that what I cared about was being successful objectively as opposed to subjectively. And so for me, it was a decision not to follow many of my classmates into the Hollywood world. Instead, I wanted to find something where if I was going to be successful, it was because of something that I did as opposed to looking a certain way for a casting director.
Gotcha. Wow, that's really powerful because I think when you're younger, you may not have that maturity to realize that or come to that conclusion. Because when I was in college, it was hard to decide what I wanted to do. Would you say you had a pretty strong conviction when you were, in college or in high school about what you wanted to do, or is this something that came about through different experiences? The reason I ask is, as teenagers or college students or young professionals go through different phases in life, they get to a point it's like, oh, I'm confused about what I want. This isn't what I really wanted. So why don't we talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I think you're totally right in that. How are you supposed to know what you're going to do with your life, who you're going to be? I do think that there are interests and abilities that you are drawn towards. And if it's possible to turn that into a career, that's the dream, right? But I also think a lot of it has to do with role modeling. Who are you exposed to? What opportunities have you even considered? If you don't know about a career, you can't put yourself on a track to move ahead there. So for me, I always knew I wanted to be a mom. I knew I was good at acting. It was something that continuously sought me out. And so my dad was very happy about me getting a scholarship. So I knew that was going to be something that the family would support. They were big on arts, which I know not everybody gets that support. So I really appreciated that opportunity. But my parents felt like it broadened me as a human, not just from a immediately into a financial or business focus. In fact, they were shocked that I changed paths so drastically. It was not a plan to go into business. My family is like, What? I'm so sorry. I'm confused. Georgia is on the corporate ladder and moving up. That actually doesn't make any sense. Because I was good at making people laugh and making people comfortable, and I was really much more interested in finding a career that had to do with, and this is like, we haven't even talked about this, doing like high adventure outdoor stuff with high risk kids. Like I was really involved in that type of thing in high school. And I realized quickly when I started interviewing post college that I wasn't going to be able to afford a plane ticket home if I went that route. And I love the adventure, but I also wanted to have the financial flexibility to create a life that I wanted. I wasn't going to rely on my parents for that. And so I started, I got my first job out of college while a lot of my friends were still working on their resumes. And it's because I was open to an opportunity. I really feel very strongly that when opportunities present themselves, it's your obligation to explore them, even if it's not something you had previously contemplated. So I was recruited from this high adventure camp that I was working at to work in the corporate office. And from there, I learned what I liked and what I didn't like about working in organizations, the values that I carried forward versus what was presented through them. And that was a really important lesson, because you end up being who you work for or what you work with. And so if you can't believe in the values, I'm not saying it has to be your life's mission, but if I couldn't put my name behind that business, it's time for me to move on. So eventually and you haven't even asked me about my path. I'm just going on it. I'm going.
It's all right. It's great. It's going great.
So I left my first job because my father had a small business and he needed somebody that he could count on. He had employees that were letting him down. And although I had no interest in being a long-term employee at the family business, for me, it was about not just taking advantage of the opportunity because I knew I could learn a lot from my father, who was a really smart businessman, but when your family needs you, you figure it out and you make it happen. So I left that job, went to work for my dad, and it was very clear that this was not going to be a forever gig, which, it's important to set expectations. And what I learned more from that job about what it is that I wanted to do next. And this, you'll laugh at this one, but one of the things I learned is that I wanted to be able to wear whatever I wanted. I cared deeply about having super pretty clothes that I could wear and like a closet full of shoes. So I realized, all right, well, that's important information. It's not what everybody's looking for, but if I was going to get up every single day and work really hard, which I was going to do, I wanted to do it in something I liked wearing.
Right. No, that's really important. Yeah. And you brought up a lot of different points that I want to go a little bit deeper on. One thing that you mentioned was the importance of learning what you don't like. I think a lot of people focus so much on, some people get confused on trying to figure out what their passion is, like it's as if it's under a rock or something. That's not the experience that I had. I had to continuously try different things to kind of, and I'm still figuring out, but I know how I have a sense of what I enjoy and what I don't enjoy. Talk to us a little bit about why it's so important to get into those experiences to figure out why you don't like something and why that's so important.
Sure. So I find that if you are doing something and you maybe don't have a clear idea of where you're going, using that opportunity to shave down the things that you dislike, because that's the stuff that starts wearing on you. That is what makes you not want to get up in the morning. It's what makes you not want to go the extra mile. And in my opinion, your career is always going to be a large part of your life. Certainly you've got your personal side, but your professional side is going to bleed into your personal side. And if you are unhappy there, you will be unhappy in the rest of your life. So figuring out the things that you like less versus the things that you can tolerate more or the things that you can grow into loving. You know, a career can definitely be an arranged marriage where all of a sudden you realize, oh my gosh, there are actually a lot of things that I value about this, and ways that I can, you know, take it to the next level. So for me, I didn't want to have a lot of people telling me what to do. I mean, I don't know if that, like a whole lot of micro control. So setting myself at a track where I might end up being more management was important, because I can be an independent thinker. I like being part of the team. I have to see the value that the leader is bringing to the team. Otherwise, I don't really want to listen to them.
Right. And you know, what I'm getting so far is, I first of all, I love your energy, but what I think is very clear is that you have a great sense of self-awareness. You know what it is that you want. You know, you mentioned that. I mean, I have the similar issue of not being told what to do all the time. As I like to think independently too, and I love working in a team as well. But if I can't voice my opinion or have enough control over what I'm doing, then it becomes a problem. But let's talk a little bit about, because you talked that you had experience at big corporate world, then you transitioned into small business. For those of people who have only one set of the experiences, what is the biggest difference that you saw?
So I have had the opportunity to look at a lot of changes from the corporate world. So just real fast, I worked for 14 years at the same corporate office. Actually, we moved a couple times, but the same business, had 3 different CEOs, so many different immediate bosses until they just stopped hiring them for me. And I worked my way up from entry level to VP. And it was a huge goal of mine, not when I started, because I didn't know that I cared about that. But about halfway through, I realized I could see a path to VP that never occurred to me that could be my future. And then I made it happen. And there were a lot of setbacks along the way. It was not an easy path. I had to sort of continuously recalibrate and make sure that I was doing everything I needed to do to make it happen without keeping my ego. You know, you got to constantly check your ego, because that's not helpful. And so when I made the switch last year, you mentioned I'm a new mom. I had my first and only son, Tate, who, thank you, he's the best. Oh my gosh. Feel free to like spend a little time talking about Tate afterwards. But I knew that a job that took so much of my time, energy, and heart, which is what my corporate role was. I traveled, I was on calls. You know, the first second I'd wake up, I'd be checking my phone. Last second I'd go to sleep. That's what I thought about. That wasn't sustainable for my family. And certainly I think we've all explored, what does this new world look like during the pandemic and post-pandemic? The biggest change from corporate world to what is more of a gig economy for me is the scheduling. I was ruled by the clock before, and I'm still ruled by the clock in that you have to show up to the appointments that you set, but I have to make my own schedule. And toting around a baby before full-time childcare is available because of the pandemic, while starting a new career, I'm like, where's my phone? Where's my notebook? Where's my baby? Just kidding. I knew where he was. But I had to completely reset my brain to figure out how I could equate what my efforts were to the paycheck at the end of the day, because I wasn't getting paid to sit at my desk. Whereas certainly I've had bosses in the past who, what they cared about was whether you were at your desk. And that's not what's going to help my family right now. And it was a total mind shift.
Yeah, I can totally relate to it. I didn't have as long of a time period.
Nobody does. Nobody. Who that long?
But I worked a little bit at a research center. It was a 9-to-5 job, and it was comfortable, but it was frustrating because I couldn't Like it didn't matter how much more I did or how much less I did. Pay was. I love my boss. She was so sweet. Both my bosses that I had at the position, but I think the frustration for me was I want to do more. I want to do something else at the same time, not just sit at this desk for 9 hours, whatever, and just kind of like half the time I was just sitting there. I wasn't really doing anything. But hopefully my previous boss doesn't see this.
I'm not sure she would be surprised to hear that, because I have that's a lot of worker bee. It's about marking time, and even if that means that you're like doing your shopping list in one browser window while you've got your conference call going on the other. Not that I ever did that. My pants.
Yeah. It's certainly a big shift when you become responsible for everything now. Pretty much your cash flow, you're wearing 1,000 different hats, plus being on top of being a mom. But what has been let's dig in a little bit deeper into the small business. What has been a biggest challenge that you saw that you didn't really face when you were in corporate world?
Yeah. I think that the two things that come to mind, one is I joined a business that my husband had built. He is a real estate agent. He is a very successful agent. He has a team. It's why I was able to, I think, have the confidence to change from a corporate role to commission only. That is a really big leap to make. And we had a baseline, and so it was accessible for us.
Yeah.
But I had an idea of what I could bring to the table, and it was based on my successful track record of creating, implementing, driving success in franchise sales. This is sales, but I was joining a team, and it definitely took me a minute to readjust and think, okay, so this is what my concept is of success and what I can bring to the table, but it's actually different than Adam's idea. And even though we talked a lot, people can say the same words and come away with totally different understandings of a conversation. Subtext is huge, and it's one of the reasons why you always want to follow up after a big conversation with a quick little email, just recapping, because you could honestly have totally different impressions and both just think, oh, this is great, we're both totally on the same track, and you're not. So being open to what was going to help him grow his business, changing my approach, which can be a little hard hitting. And, shocker, that doesn't always play well, even if it's your husband. So figuring out the actual value that I could bring in a new situation. I hadn't been other than the American Barbecue Showdown, which is like a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
I hadn't been in a new experience where I was the new kid in a decade and a half. And so continuously revisiting the conversation about what I could contribute, and then making sure that I understood his expectations has been a big part.
Yeah. Yeah. You brought up setting expectations a couple of times now, and, we know how important that is. Let's talk a little bit about that, especially, when you're working with your husband, because a lot of people try to stay away from family when they're doing business.
Oh, yeah.
I can't imagine doing business with someone else besides my brothers or my family, because we just have that strong bond. We have the history. We got through a lot of difficulties, challenges throughout our childhood. But talk to us a little bit about how important it is to set, certain expectations and how to carry out those conversations with your husband, who is, pretty much your boss in this relationship.
Setting expectations. What's your end goal? Backing back into what your bite-sized goals are. I definitely start with like lofty, big dreams.
Mm-hmm.
And then I try to work backwards to identify what are the step stairs that are going to get me there. And then breaking down each of those step stairs further to true action items. So for me, I have to have a vision board. I have to have I go with like a big notebook without even any lines on it. Back to the, don't hem me in category. So I try to identify what it is that I'm working on long-term, monthly, down to the week. And I put it on paper so that I can make sure that Adam and I are aligned in what I'm spending my time on in that particular category. And that goes back to, yes, real estate is my new career, but I also have, creative artistic endeavors that I'm pursuing that don't pay any money. And so how do you balance your dreams versus what you need to do to actually put food on the table?
Yeah. So
I think from that perspective, making sure that you're having those continued conversations and putting it down on paper so that you can, it's trackable. If it's not trackable, it didn't happen.
That's right. Yeah.
And then I think in terms of working with my husband, my old corporate job, we used to joke when we would see folks come in and be husband and wife teams, because I had seen so many divorces over the years. It's the most stressful thing I think you can do is go into business with somebody whose relationship you truly value. But here's the thing. If you go into a partnership with someone who you don't have a relationship or you don't value, that's guaranteed to fail. Yeah. So it is, in my opinion, worth the hard work and potential tears, not talking from experience here, about how you can, what was the point of leaving the corporate world if I couldn't come up with a life that was improved with my husband, so that we have the flexibility to spend time as a family, that we have the financial wherewithal to achieve our dreams and still be talking about retirement and what's that long-term path look like for us. Yeah. So it's all that communication.
Yeah, I think we're getting me and Josh ourselves are getting a lot of reminders.
I have a question with you. So you have the plans, all written out, visualized. How do you keep each other accountable in a supporting way? Because sometimes it can be very challenging.
Oh yeah.
It can be nagging too, like naggy and annoying.
Yes.
But how do you do that with your husband?
I think carefully is the answer.
Okay.
Absolutely. You could go into, I think, some more toxic communication circles, like nagging. That's the last thing I want in my life. Like, I don't want anyone to think that I'm nagging. I would rather not ever to even speak to that person again. For us, it's I think diving a little bit into your love language, which is appropriate whether you're working with your husband or working with your brother or just working with somebody whose relationship you value. If I am an early morning person, my husband is a late evening person. We never matched up from a sleep perspective. And so that means that in the mornings, I am more patient than I would normally extend my patience. And in the evenings, he is more patient with me and does not bring up okay, well, this deal looks like it might get delayed, and this, I think we need to do this. We'll leave each other notes. We have our productive time is midday. That's the stars align. So figuring out what is the right time and the right way, so that somebody can take in the information that you need to give, and it's constant. It's not this is never a set it and forget it situation. Constant nuances. And I'm always trying to throw in love notes, and that's pretty self-evident when it's your husband that you're working with. At the corporate world, I would bring in little tiny nothings, that would make people feel loved, because people are not going to do a good job unless they want to work for you and work with you. So you have to be even if it is very difficult, and I am not saying that I am great at this all the time, but you got to continuously go back to remind yourself to be pleasant, to be, direct, to not take any sort of implied negative feeling, whether it's through text message or because they haven't had their coffee yet. Gotta do everything you can to be as pleasant as you can, because otherwise that's not going to work.
Yeah. Wow. I'm taking notes for not only my business, but also for my wife. Sometimes communication can be difficult, but you brought up a great point about understanding how whoever you're speaking to communicates, not so much how you communicate. It's always about them first, understanding where they're coming from, understanding how they process information, how they process message, and also being pleasant. It's so true. I think we've worked with, different people during our short time of work with me and my brother. Some people have been phenomenal, so patient, but also pleasant. They're firm on what they want, but they're also very pleasant to work with. But then you have other people who are just okay, a little bit difficult to speak with. But let's touch on one more point in regards to your transition, because I think I'm trying to give as much value to people who will listen to this in the future as well. I think a lot of people have a lot of fear when it comes to jumping ship with something that they've worked, especially like in your case, 14, 15 years. How did you face the fear? And then now looking back, what would you have done differently? Or what are some expectations or ideas that you had in your head that weren't true? Let's dig a little bit into that as well.
I don't know that I have as clear-cut an answer for this one, because although I knew that I needed to find the next phase for my career, I didn't have a fully defined plan when I left my corporate world. And that, let me tell you, is unusual for me. I like a plan. I'm a little bit type-A. And that's just not the way last year played out. So it was really nerve-wracking. And it continues to be nerve-wracking, although less so. I knew that I had devoted so much of myself and my heart to my last role, and I knew I'd do the same for this one. But I also knew, like I mentioned earlier, I've got goals in the creative field, and that's not something that I'm going to be able to focus on full time until maybe I retire. But I can still get stuff done in the meantime. So I'm just trying to take advantage of the opportunities afforded to me in terms of flexibility and time management. And because before I had been a corporate face and I was so connected with that company, I didn't feel like I had the freedom to explore some of the softer creative sides of me that I had left behind in college. So I don't have a great answer for you there, but I guess I'm a fan of the leap and the net will appear quote, because if you can believe it, you can achieve it. How many of these can I pull in? I don't know that many. But I do have a mantra of my own that is not on any greeting cards yet. I'm hoping, eventually it'll be rolled out on magnets. But it's vision, energy, drive. If you want to do something, you have to be able to visualize it. You have to be able to see, what does success mean to you, and get like deep into the nitty gritty in that visualization. Picture it. Before I made VP, I could see it in my head. I would write it in the condensation on the shower door. Like when I got up in the morning, I was like, this is what I want. And that's what drove me. That's what got me there in the tough times. And I do the same thing with what my goals are now. Then you bring energy to that project and you drive through to completion. A lot of folks, I think, can do one or two of those, but unless you've got all three, you're going to have a hard time succeeding.
Yeah, that's great. That's fantastic. But now we're gonna. Did you have something to ask, Josh?
Yeah, just one question. So you took many leaps in your lifetime from theater to corporate to small business. That takes a lot of self-confidence. Where do you think you developed that in your lifetime?
I have talked about this with my parents, actually. I think that a lot of it had to do with how they raised me. It's lessons that I have continued through, which is not to shy away from the hard work. I mean, the hard work is sometimes really fun, and the hard work is sometimes really, really dirty. And maybe it's like, you know, getting out the vacuum because you're not waiting around for someone else to do the vacuuming. That rug needs vacuuming. So find a vacuum and clean the rug. So for me, it's about if there's something that needs to be done, getting it done. With other lessons that my parents taught me is they really allowed me to sort of adventure. I did way more outdoors, like stuff that I think people would. My parents were not helicopter parents. I'm going to go ahead and say that right now. They're always, you know, as safe as it can be. We were never like risk takers in the sense of like no consequences whatsoever. But it's about risk management. So having the adventure, but being aware of what the outcome could be, adjusting, trusting your own instinct. This is, you guys are going to think this sounds crazy. My parents' philosophy raising us was, if they were to die tomorrow, would we be okay? And that started from like the first couple of years. And I think it's why my siblings and I are so comfortable cooking and talking to people and getting out there and doing the stuff that you might be uncomfortable with, because it needs to get done. And you're not going to rely on somebody else to do it.
Yeah, I like that because, you know, our parents are pretty gangster too, in the sense that you know, we came to America. The story goes is that we had 7 bags and $700 with 7 people. Well, one was still in the belly, but we literally had nothing. They took such big risks. They were missionaries beforehand, so just that in itself, they weren't making like regular income like most people. They had to like go out there and fundraise or sell items and goods to make a living and stuff. So, you know, I think it's really important to understand and also realize how your parents have raised you and how much impact that has, because I think it follows you all throughout your life, even though my life has been pretty short so far. It's been great, but it's quite short. But let's start to touch on your soft side, the cooking. I love all the cooking pictures you put on your Instagram. Come on now. Like, they look delicious. Yeah, tell us a little bit about your Netflix experience, your show with Netflix, and some of the things that you found surprising in that experience.
The whole thing was surprising, literally from the start to the finish. So this is not something I applied for. Again, you know, I'm big on when the opportunity comes, take it. I had roasted a whole pig in the backyard for my father's birthday. One does sometimes. And I posted a picture on Instagram, and a casting agent reached out, and I said, this is a scam. Please don't. This is ridiculous. But they kept calling. They called my parents in Colombia. I was like, wow, this number. And so I looked them up, and I talked to my husband, and he looked them up, and they seemed legit. So I had the conversation, and they encouraged me to submit an application, and it was a multi-month process of submitting photos and videos and doing psychological testing and all sorts of just stuff that I had not even contemplated. And then when I got there, and it turned out that I think I was the one with absolutely the least amount of experience from a barbecue perspective, certainly from a TV perspective. And by the way, it was a heat wave, and I was pregnant, and
oh wow.
Yeah, it was I mean, not just the most surprising experience of my life, but maybe the most grueling. And that comes from like doing work crew in New Mexico with like a 150-pound bag. Like I have done some grueling things. I played on the men's rugby team in college, and this was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life.
Wow.
Wow.
So there must be a lot of things that obviously, you're pretty familiar with the filming industry. There's a lot of things that happens behind the scenes that the viewers don't see.
Mhm.
Tell us a little bit about that. Besides lugging around 150-pound bags.
Well, that was in a previous life.
Okay.
What I had to haul on that set was like firewood and charcoal to get my fire started in the morning before we'd start the actual filming, and then the sides of meat. There were some pretty intense sides of meat there in the meat locker. So. Wow. I think for me, some of the most interesting things, one, I've got an NDA in place, so I can't share all of the sausage making secrets, so to speak. But the one that made me laugh was everybody else, all the production, they all have little earbuds in.
Yeah.
And they're all talking to the control center, which is where the actual director sits. So the assistant director is the one who's out on set. You never even see the director. But it's so disconcerting that you are sitting there, interview day, they set you up, they're like, got the smoke machine going, and they're looking at me, talking at me, saying, I think that's just the way she sits. Yeah, no, I think that's just the way she sits. I'm like, it is, it's just the way I sit. I didn't think about how I was sitting, but I should have. I think I was like too stiff for their liking. So I thought that was really kind of a fun thing. Was the huge number of crew there, like 150 crew people. Wow! Never occurred to me the scale and scope of the show. Production value obviously very high, and I think it made me reminisce about my old theater days, and I kind of felt like I should have gone into costume and set design. It was like my favorite thing to look at when we were there. I was like, when they did the 4th of July episode, and I wanted to be like, ooh, how are they going to decorate the set? Which I don't think anyone else is thinking about.
Yeah. But that's a huge part to production, as I've learned from our experience too. And we didn't have 150 people crew; we had 3. But yeah, set design and all the minute details, especially when you're trying to do something higher production, is so important. When you're doing something, more relaxed, it's not as much of a thought. But yeah, thank you for sharing that. And one last topic that we want to go into was Compass, the company that you're working for. And I took a look at their website. I looked at their intro video. It's a really neat concept. It looks like they provide a lot of the technology for the agents so that they don't have to worry about it. One thing that that drew attention naturally was the marketing part, where they have a platform to run Facebook and Instagram ads with a click of a button, literally, without going through the entire Facebook platform, which can be overwhelming to a lot of people. But tell us a little bit about the company and the role you play and how your experience has been as an agent and company or a Compass.
I had the benefit of learning about Compass through my husband, because he had been a real estate agent with a local, East Coast firm, and when you don't want to change brokerages all the time, right? That's a big decision to make. And he had a really successful business. It was approached by Compass to become a Compass agent. And this is conversations that he had had with other firms throughout his career. I think when it's the same case in any category, right? If you're good, people want to recruit you. He talked to all of those other companies, and Compass was the first one that brought something new to the table. They are not just reinventing how real estate is done, but they're doing it in such a thoughtful, technology marketing forward way that it's going to change the industry. It already has. And if you're not thinking about those things as a small business person, if you're not thinking about who can do some of that heavy lifting because you don't have enough hours in the day to create something like that, not to mention the funds and bandwidth, then I think you probably need to reevaluate your goals, because maybe you only have small goals.
Mhm.
I don't. I only have big goals. And
Wow, powerful.
crazy. And so Compass was a company that Adam could see himself growing with. And when we contemplated me joining the team, it made sense because he was at Compass. If he was at another brokerage, I'm not sure it would have made sense. But we see the footprint they've had already in just a short period of time and the value it brings to our clients and the business that we are creating. So I'm extremely enthusiastic about the company, the leadership of the company, the values that they bring. You know, they care so deeply about getting it right for our clients, attracting the folks that are going to be the right fit as real estate agents is a really huge piece, because not everyone has the same sort of ethics-driven focus on sales. And this is going to be one of the largest purchases, maybe the largest purchase you are ever going to make in your life.
That's right.
If you can't trust that your real estate agent is going to get it right and they're going to do it with your best interests at heart, then that's too bad. But that's what I want. I want to bring, you know, for many years I helped people buy businesses. Now I'm helping people buy homes, and both have been fun. But to see somebody in a home that I helped them purchase and get a great value on, and then help them settle in and like talk about what their landscaping is going to be. Oh my God. How did I land in this wonderful career?
Yeah, that's fantastic. I love it. Let's talk a little bit about, because you talked a lot about how the experience for the real estate agent has been different with Compass and all the value that they bring. How is it different for the people buying the house from comparing to the traditional other real estate companies who've been around for a while, Remax, or, you know, whatever big companies there are that aren't as tech savvy, that aren't as consumer centric in their approach, in the content that they put out, and, you know, from A to Z. Tell us a little bit about that, so that, you know, possibly whoever's watching the show is looking to buy a house can approach you as well.
Love that. So there are going to be two different types of clients: your listings, so those who want to sell their house, and those that want to buy a house. Compass helps with both of those tracks. From a listing perspective, they're going to have not just the Facebook ads that you mentioned and Instagram social media ads, but they're also going to have the algorithms behind their marketing that's going to reach more potential buyers for your home. The technology for how we can track those that have expressed interest or might be interested, as well as creating really beautiful marketing brochures and videos and all of that support. Not to mention the whole back office training platform and support from your local broker manager. There's just a ton, a whole network that's been built into the process. And then from a buyer perspective, they have a whole element of coming soon listings where you may not even be aware it's on the larger MRIS market because it's in a Compass exclusive. So agents have access to it, but it might be something where you have an opportunity to sell your home, and and of course following all of the rules in terms of fair housing and making sure that everyone has access to it. But it's tools that they are thinking about that either previously didn't exist or existed in a very small way. They have created and grown them. So if you find another need, you can contact them and they will take it under advisement. But we get regular communications from the CEO. He lives his life the way he runs his company, and it's focused on excellence. And that's what I would want from anybody I'm doing business with.
That's beautiful. Josh, you got anything to add on this one?
No, it's everything just great. But yeah, I actually watched your show, the Netflix show.
Thank you.
And I was just wondering, if you had another chance to do it again, how would you fry your green tomatoes?
Such a good question. Something I've thought a lot about. Mostly I've thought about sandwiches, but I have thought about fried green tomatoes. One, I hope I do get another opportunity because it was so out of my comfort zone that
Right.
I do think I could have done a whole lot better if I had any understanding of what to expect. I mean, 17 hours on set for one, shoot. It's like, there isn't a handbook for this.
Right.
For the fried green tomatoes, oh my gosh, I just feel like I have so many things I could have improved upon. I know that I drove the culinary team crazy because I was the messiest. I was the messiest,
I see.
not just like
I see.
by like a small amount. I was like I feel like culinary would like yell at me after
Oh,
shoots.
I
They were
see.
just like, Georgia, what has happened to your station? And I'm like, I'm like a whirling dervish. I just needed to I had to get so much done, and we didn't have a lot of time. You don't know where anything are.
That's right.
So I probably shouldn't have even put the fried green tomatoes on the sandwich. I should have just made them for myself for a snack because you do get hungry there, and done something a little bit safer. But you know what? I'm not all about the safe route.
That's why you're here, as a accomplished woman. You're a risk taker.
I'm a risk taker,
Yes,
and
yes.
usually it pans out, but sometimes it doesn't, and you got to be okay with that.
Yep.
Right. Definitely.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's being professional overall.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Thank you so much, Georgia, for joining us. How can they reach you in social media?
Well, this has been a real pleasure. You can follow me on Instagram. I am the real Georgia Chasen. And my email address is super easy, georgia.chasen@gmail.com. I also have a website. It doesn't have anything exciting happening there. And it's georgiachasen.com. So check me out at any of those areas. I'd love to chat. And hopefully, I don't know, give advice, hear advice. I'm open.
Yes.
Thank you so much. This was so much fun.
Thank you,
And,
Isaac. Thank you, Josh.
Yeah.
Yes. And you don't have to leave this platform yet, but I'll just end the live show now. Okay. Thank you, everyone.